So, what if I told you that one of the most common rules for making educational videos is just plain wrong? Today, we're going to tear down a really popular myth and get into the actual neuroscience of how to make videos that don't just get watched, but that actually, teach. Right. You've heard it a million times, I'm sure. People have the attention span of a goldfish. You have to keep your videos under 6 minutes or else. It's a rule that's been drilled into pretty much every creator out there. But you know what? The science tells a completely different and way more interesting story. The myth basically says our brains have this built-in biological timer that just switches off at 6 minutes. But that's not how it works at all. Neuroscience shows us that attention is way more like a muscle. It can be trained, it can be sustained, but it all depends on how you engage it. So it's not about the clock. It's about the cognitive workout you're giving the viewer. Okay, so where did this whole 6-minute idea even come from? Let's take a look at the data that gets so consistently misunderstood. Check out this graph. This right here is the source of the whole 6-minute myth. And yeah, you can see engagement drops. It goes from almost 100% in the first few minutes down to about 50% by the 9-minute mark. But look closer. There's no cliff at minute 6, is there? It's a gradual slope, a slow drift. People don't just vanish. They get bored because the content isn't structured to hold them. So here's the big takeaway from that. Obsessing over video length is kind of like judging a book by how many pages it has. It just doesn't make sense. A short, badly designed video can be just as useless as a long, rambling one. The real measure of learning isn't duration. It's all about the design. And that brings us right to the heart of it. If we're not supposed to be watching the clock, what should we be focusing on? Well, the answer is simple. Structure. The way the video is designed is what really truly matters. This quote just nails it. We have to stop being timekeepers and start being architects. So the real question is, how do we build a video that's actually designed for the human brain? Let's break down the 6 key principles you need to know. First things first, before we can even think about long-term memory, we have to win the battle for attention, right? These first 3 principles are your secret weapons for turning passive viewers into active, engaged learners. Okay, principle number 1 is intentional segmentation. Here's a way to think about it. Your working memory is like a really small table. You can only put a few things on it at one time. If you just keep piling on more and more information, stuff is going to start falling off. Segmentation is all about giving the brain just 1 or 2 key things at a time, letting it process them, and then moving on to the next. And actually putting this into practice is pretty easy. You just structure your content around distinct ideas, each one lasting maybe 5 to 10 minutes. You make sure there are clear transitions between them, and you use simple features like chapters or even just timestamps in the description so people can easily find their way around. Next up, we've got retrieval practice. This is where we make the leap from just showing someone something to them actually knowing it. Retrieval practice is kind of like a mental push-up. Every single time you make your brain pull up a piece of information, you're making that neural pathway stronger, which makes it way easier to remember later. And the effect of this is, honestly, it's staggering. The research is crystal clear. When you actively recall something, you retain it up to 50% better than if you just passively rewatch or reread it. That's not some tiny improvement. That's a total game changer for learning. Our third engagement principle is called strategic signaling. This is all about being a good tour guide for your viewer's brain. You're using simple cues, like highlighting a word, using an arrow, or making some text bold, to point their attention to the most important stuff on the screen. It helps them separate the essential signal from all the background noise. But, and this is a big but, less is more. Seriously, if you overload the screen with highlights and arrows and colors, it's actually worse than using nothing at all. The key is to be disciplined. Stick to just 3 or 4 highlights in any 2-minute stretch, use a single color to keep things clean, and make sure your text always shows up right next to the thing it's describing. Simple. Okay, so we've got their attention, we've got them engaged, awesome. But how do we make sure that what they've learned doesn't just, poof, disappear an hour later? That's the challenge of retention. And our next 3 principles are all about making learning stick around for the long haul. Principle number 4 is instructor presence. It's so simple. When we see a person's face and hear their voice, our brains just light up these things called social cognition networks. We are hardwired to learn from other people. Seeing an instructor creates a sense of trust and human connection that a disembodied voice over some slides just can't match. And that leads to much deeper learning. All right, principle 5, learner control. This one might seem obvious, but it is so powerful. We all have this deep, fundamental psychological need to feel in control of our own experiences. So when someone can pause, rewind, or change the speed, they're not just passively getting information dumped on them, they're actively managing their own learning journey. And what happens when you give up that little bit of control? The payoff is huge. Studies show that when learners can manage their own pace, their retention can shoot up by as much as 60%. It lets them tailor the experience to their own brain, you know? They can spend more time on the tricky stuff and just breeze through what they already get. And that brings us to our final and absolutely crucial principle, distributed practice. You can think of this as the anti-cramming principle. I mean, think about it. Would you rather study for a test for 8 hours straight the night before, or for 1 hour a day over 8 days? We all know that second approach, distributed practice, is way, way better for long-term memory. It gives your brain time to digest and store the information between sessions. Learning isn't a one-time event, it's a process. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds great in a perfect world. But what if the platform you're stuck using doesn't have built-in quizzes or fancy chapter markers? Let's talk about how to make this work in the real world. So you're all fired up to try these principles, but you look at your tools and they feel limited. You don't see a retrieval practice button anywhere. Does that mean you're out of luck? No way. It just means we have to get a little creative. You can build these principles right into your content itself. For segmentation, just manually add timestamps in your description. It's that simple. For retrieval practice, just put up a slide that literally says, pause here and answer this question, or take a second and jot down the 3 main takeaways from this last part. You become the feature that the platform is missing. So we've busted the myth, and we've walked through the 6 principles for video that actually teaches. Let's pull all of this together into one simple, actionable tool that you can start using immediately. This is it. This is your new quality control checklist. Before you hit that publish button, just run through these questions. Is my content broken into segments? Am I asking questions? Is the instructor visible? This isn't just about making better videos. It's about respecting your viewers' time and, frankly, respecting their brain. It's about being a great teacher. And that leaves us with one last really important question to ask yourself. When you go to create your next piece, are you just making content that you hope gets watched, or are you designing a true learning experience, one that's actually engineered for the human brain? The choice, as they say, is yours.